Is it possible, sir, to observe this movement of disorder with a mind that is disorderly itself, and say, can this mind observe disorder, this mind which is already in a state of disorder? So disorder isn't out there,
No.
but in here. Now, can the mind observe that disorder without introducing a factor of an observer who is orderly?
Who will superimpose?
Yes. Therefore, observe perceived disorder without the perceiver. I don't know
Yes.
if I'm making
Yes,
sense
you
at
are.
all.
Yes, you're making sense.
That is, to understand disorder, we think an orderly mind is necessary.
As over against the disorderly one.
Disorder. But the mind itself has created this disorder, which is thought and all the rest of it. So can the mind not look at disorder out there, but the maker of disorder which is in here?
Which is itself the very mind.
Mind
as
itself is
disordered.
disordered.
Yes. But as soon as that is stated conceptually,
No. Concepts is finished.
yes,
That's like
but we are using words.
we are using words to communicate.
Exactly. And what I'm concerned with just for a second is, what are we going to say when we hear the statement that it is the disordered mind that keeps proliferating disorder, but it's that disordered mind that must see, that must see.
I'm going to show you that. You will see in a minute what takes place.
Yes.
Disorder is not outside of me. Disorder is inside of me. That's a fact. Because the mind is disorderly, all its activities must be disorderly. And the activities of disorder is proliferating or is moving in the world. Now, can this mind observe itself without introducing the factor of an orderly mind, which is the opposite? I don't know.
Yes, it is. The opposite is, of course it's the
So
opposite.
can it observe without the observer, who is the opposite?
That's the question.
Now, watch it, sir, if you are really interested in it.
I'm deeply interested in it.
If you will see, the observer is the observed. The observer who says, I am orderly and I must put order in disorder. Generally what takes place. But the observer is the factor of disorder. Because the observer is the past, is the factor of division. Where there is division, there is not only conflict, but disorder. You could see so happening actually in the world. I mean, all this problem of energy, all this problem of war, peace and all that, can all be solved absolutely when there are not separate governments, sovereign armies, and say, look, let's solve this problem all together, for God's sake. We are human beings. This earth is meant for us to live on. Not Arabs and Israelis and America and Russia. It's our earth.
And it's round. Yes.
But we'll never do that because our minds are so conditioned to live in disorder, to live in conflict.
And vocation is given a religious description in terms of the task of cleaning up the disorder with my idea of order.
Or your idea of order is the fact that has produced disorder.
Exactly.
So it brings up a question, so it's very interesting. Can the mind observe itself without the observer? Because the observer is the observed. Disorder, the observer who says, I will bring order in disorder, that observer itself is a fragment of disorder.
Yes.
Therefore, it can never bring about order. So can the mind be aware of itself as a movement of disorder, not trying to correct it, not trying to justify it, not trying to shape it, just to observe. I said previously, to observe sitting on the banks of a river and watch the waters go by. You see, then you see much more. But if you are in the middle of it swimming, you'll see nothing.
I've never forgotten that it was when I stopped questioning and I stood before that droplet of dew on the leaf that everything changed. Totally.
Right.
Totally. And what you say is true. Once something like that happens, there isn't a regression from it.
Oh, no, sir,
Yes.
it is not once, it is...
Forever. It's, yes.
It
Yeah.
is not an incident that took place. It is, my life is not an incident, it is a movement.
Exactly.
And in that movement, I observe this movement of disorder. And therefore, the mind itself is disorderly. And how can that disorderly, chaotic, contradictory, absurd little mind bring about order? It can't. Therefore, a new factor is necessary. And the new factor is to observe, to perceive, to see without the perceiver.
To perceive without the perceiver. To perceive without the perceiver.
Because the perceiver is the perceived.
Yes.
If you once grasp that, then you see everything without the perceive. You don't bring in your personality, your ego, your selfishness. You say, disorder is the factor which is in me, not out there. The politicians trying to bring about order, when they are themselves so corrupt. You follow, sir? How
Yes, I
can
do.
they bring order?
It's impossible. It's impossible. It's a one long series of
And
palliatives.
that's what's happening in the world. Where the politicians are ruling the world. From Moscow, from in Delhi, from Washington, wherever it is. It's the same pattern being repeated. Living a chaotic, corrupt life, you try to bring order in the world. It's childish. So, that's why transformation of the mind is not your mind or my mind. It's the mind, the human mind.
Or the mind trying to order itself, even. Not even that.
Now, how can
It's because
a
the
blind
perceiver is
man
the
trying
perceiver.
to bring about color? And he says, well, that's gray, and for it has no meaning. So, can the mind observe this disorder in itself without the observer who has created disorder? So this brings a very simple thing. To look at a tree, at a woman, at a mountain, at a bird, or a sheet of water with a light on it, the beauty of it, to look without the seer. Because the moment the seer comes in, the observer comes in, he divides. And the division is all right as long as it's descriptive. But when you are living with living, that division is destructive. I don't know if you have noticed.
Yes, what was running through my mind was this continuous propaganda that we hear about the techniques that are available to still the mind. But that requires a stiller to do the stilling.
No,
and so that is absolutely, I'm using your words, absolutely and totally out of any possibility of attaining.
But yet, you see, that's what the gurus are doing.
Yes, I do understand.
The imported gurus and the native gurus are doing this. They are really destroying people. You follow, sir? We'll talk about when the occasion arises. What we are now concerned is measurement, which is the whole movement of commercialism, consumerism, technology, is now the pattern of the world. Begun in the West and made more and more and more perfect in the West, and that's spreading all over the world. Go to the most smallest little town in India or anywhere, the same pattern being repeated. And the village you go, and they are so miserable and happy, one meal a day, but it is still within that pattern. And the governments are trying to solve these problems separately. You follow? France by itself, Russia by itself. It's a human problem. Therefore, it has to be approached not with a Washington mind or a London mind or a Moscow mind, with a mind that is human, that says, look, this is our problem, and for God's sake, let's get together and solve it. Which means care, which means accepting responsibility for every human being. So let's come back. As we said, order comes only with the understanding of disorder. In that there is no superimposition, in that there is no conflict, in that there is no suppression. When you suppress, you react, you know all that business. So it is totally a different kind of movement, order. And that order is real virtue. Because without virtue, there is no order. There's gangsterism.
Oh, yes.
Politically or in other way, religiously. But without virtue, virtue being conduct. The flowering in goodness every day. It is not a theory, so it actually takes place when you live that way.
You know, The hexagram in the I Ching called conduct is also translated treading.
Treading.
Treading, meaning a movement.
Of course.
A movement. And that's a vastly different understanding of the usual notion of conduct. Yes, but I understand from what you've said that your use of the word conduct as virtue, as order, is precisely oriented to act, movement.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
See, a man who acts out of disorder is creating more disorder. The politician, look at his life, sir. Ambitious, greedy, seeking power, position.
Running for election.
All the rest of it. Yeah. And he is the man that's going to create order in the world. The tragedy of it, and we accept it. You follow?
Yes, we believe it's inevitable. We do.
And therefore we are irresponsible.
Because he did it and I didn't. Yes, yes.
Because we accept disorder in our life. I don't accept disorder in my life. I want to live an orderly life, which means I must understand disorder. And where there is order, the brain functions much better.
There is a miracle here, isn't there?
Absolutely, that's the miracle.
There's a miracle here. As soon as I grasp the movement of disorder.
The mind grasps, yeah.
Yes. Behold, there's order.
That's just it, sir.
That's truly miraculous. Perhaps it's the one and only miracle.
Well, there are other miracles, but
I mean, in the deepest sense of the word, all of them would have to be related to that, or we wouldn't have any of them, is what I meant. The real heart, the real core.
That's why, sir, relationship, communication, responsibility, freedom, and this freedom from disorder is a great sense of beauty in it. You know, a life that is beautiful, a life that is really flowering in goodness. Unless we bring about such human beings, the world will go to pot.
Yes.
This is what's happening. And I feel it's my responsibility. And to me that I'm passionate about it. It's my responsibility. To see that when I talk to you, you understand it, you live it, you function, move in that way.